Hi, welcome to week 4. The week 3 discussion forum on synchronous and asynchronous interaction was very interesting. I thought that you all raised many exceptional points, and some of the points deserve to be further amplified. And I agree with the common belief that real-time interaction can promote active learning, and that it's easier to establish dialogue with one's students and for the students to establish dialogue with each other. The problem with asynchronous communication is that while the quality of dialogue could be very strong, because it takes place over an extended period of time, oftentimes the conversations will appear to be discontinuous. In a synchronous environment, whether it's real time online or in a face-to-face classroom, you do get immediate feedback and response, and that in turn enables all participants to adjust the manner of presentation and the content in which they offer. Several other strategies were mentioned during the course of the discussion forum as well. It was noted that WPI enables faculty to upload their face-to-face courses into an online environment such as Blackboard so that students can access them at a later date. And I think there could be some real value to that, and that it enables students who are present in the classroom to go back and review a specific interaction to refresh their memory or to drill down into greater detail into their understanding of the situation. But as others pointed out, it might also be efficacious for an instructor to upload notes that will help the student focus on the content that was covered in the class and minimize the potential distraction of interpersonal transactions. So that's where we run into difficulty. Because real-time synchronous communication offers us information through so many different modes, we sometimes can lose sight of the primary objective of a course lesson, whether it's to convey content or teach students new skills or to promote interaction. Because there are so many modes of communication being used real time, oftentimes it's easy to focus on peripheral items at the expense of the primary focus of the lesson's design. What's nice about asynchronous communication is that you really do free yourself and your students from the constraints of locality. So students don't have to be proximate to one another or to the instructor in order to participate in a class classroom, and nor do they need to participate at the same time, which encourages a tremendous amount of flexibility. But this said, when one structures asynchronous activities, there is the potential for students to become out of sync, so to speak. That students have to be fairly well self-directed and organized to stay on task and to meet various deadlines and to be willing to interact with one another frequently so that the course discourse is relatively continuous. Or the instructor has to build in a series of checks and interstitial deadlines to ensure that continuous interaction occurs. Now, what's nice about asynchronous communication, asynchronous teaching strategies, it does enable the students the opportunity to reflect on what it is they want to say before they say it publicly. And in this regard, asynchronous communication tools are oftentimes a boon for the shy or insecure student, who oftentimes feels very anxious when asked to respond or contribute extemporaneously in a face-to-face setting. But synchronous tools can be used to help break down the barriers of location as well. And I myself will use synchronous tools for virtual office hours to meet with my students, or occasionally we will do synchronous activities to help compensate for snow days or other external situations that prevent the classes from meeting. Synchronous tools oftentimes are good to initiate group collaboration. That the immediate feedback and response could more quickly shape group direction than a series of extended turn takings that take place in an asynchronous environment. So if I'm going to task a group with a small group project, what I could encourage them to use discussion forums, and eventually, hopefully over the course of time, they'll settle on an approach and a method that they could use to meet the assignment's activities, the assignment's requirements. Or they could, the group, if they can arrange a common time, communicate with each other either face to face or um, online synchronously to quickly establish their focus and approach. So then they can use asynchronous tools to develop and build out their deliverables. So I think that there could be real value in combining synchronous and asynchronous tools in one's teaching. A number of you use the term complement, and I tend to agree with that. Synchronous technologies complement asynchronous technologies nicely. And just as not all students are visual learners, and that we as instructors need to figure out different modes of delivering our content to our students to maximize their chances of success, I think we also need to have a mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities so that we can be assured that our students' learning needs are adequately addressed, and that we can have the opportunity to have spontaneous free-form interaction that complements, that balances the more structured and deliberative communication patterns that are normally associated with asynchronous tools. One of you pointed out how that when we communicate, that less than 10% of our message is conveyed through language, and that the bulk of our messaging and intent is conveyed through body language and intonation and other forms of speech patterns and expression. And that's quite true. We read our students when we're talking in front of a class. The students read our body language in order to get a clearer, more full picture of the messages that we are trying to convey. But this said, there is a very rich area of research that explores nonverbal communications in text and social media environments. And I think that there's a growing consensus that that nonverbal communication could be equally as effective and equally as important in text-based synchronous and asynchronous environments as it is in face-to-face visual environments. So I think what we're starting to see is a growing digital divide based on familiarity and comfort with the use of social media and instant communications. Some of it's generational, other is based on technology literacy and fluency, but it's something that we need to be sensitive to, in that the way we receive asynchronous communication might be very different than that of our students, especially students who immerse themselves in the social media. And that's what brings us to week 4. Week 4, we're going to be exploring a little bit on using Facebook and Twitter as teaching tools. Now, there's a lot of literature out there in which instructors will replace their learning management system with a social media platform such as Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, with the idea that social media is very heavily used by their students. So it might be effective to meet students in the spaces in which they're most comfortable. And there could be, I think there is a good amount of credence to this belief. There's some, real specific pedagogical value of using social media in one's teaching. For instance, a student will have access to multiple audiences and very large audiences if Twitter or Facebook is used, for instance. In most learning management systems, the majority of communication takes place to an audience of one's classroom peers. So sometimes there's some real value of rehearsing and presenting ideas to a larger audience, an audience that extends way beyond one's classroom, and an audience that could draw from pretty much any demographic in the world. It's a good opportunity to see what works and what doesn't work in the articulation of different concepts and beliefs. I think there are some issues associated with using social media in one's teaching. I think first is that there can't be a blurring of the lines between private life and public life, or private life and professional life. So what I encourage my students to do when I do use social media is that they create a professional social media account, a professional Facebook account, or a professional Twitter account that they only use for professional activities or learning activities, and that they segregate their private lives from their professional lives as a way to maintain distinct personas. That's something that most students are going to need to learn how to negotiate when they graduate from college or university anyway. But it also enables the professional social media streams to be a little more focused. But that also brings up another issue. When we move outside of a learning management system and into social media space, we're now competing with multiple streams of information, and it becomes very quickly overwhelming, I think, for a lot of users trying to negotiate a specific course, a series of specific course exchanges with all the other information flowing into that social media account. So you got the volume of information as well as the sequential nature in which information is posted can lead to a very disruptive experience. I'm really on the fence in terms of using social media in my teaching. I'll use it occasionally for discrete activities in which I really want students to be able to access broad audiences of demographics outside of our classroom, but I'm not comfortable using it as a full learning platform because of the tremendous volume of information and conflicting messages and content that students can receive. We're going to experiment a little bit with social media this week and next. This week, what we're doing is setting up the basic sandbox accounts, testing them out, and then next week we're going to actually use them more heavily for course activity. This week, we're also going to begin a two-part conversation on how do we select the technologies that we want to use in our teaching. And we have to balance two oftentimes conflicting priorities. We want to use the technologies that are standard in our profession, but we also have to be sensitive to issues of cost for our students and the cost of deployment, as well as how these students will be supported in their specialty technology use. That's a very problematic issue for most teachers. But for now, I want you to take away that the conversations have been very, very good. A lot of excellent ideas. I like the way people are referencing external material in their discussion forum posts. And your products are very inspiring to read. I'll forward off emails to you individually when I finish up reading your Google Doc assignment. But for now, take care, and I hope you enjoy week 4's materials.